Hello, everyone. So in this interview today, I have a wonderful guest, Kamal Ahmada. He's an educator and a public speaker around the themes of race, identity, and diversity. Welcome.
Hi, Renata. Nice to
Hi.
speak to you again. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being there. So why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about your background story? How do you start to care about those themes that you talk about?
All right. So first of all, as you can see, I'm a Black person. So the issue of race, it's quite, it occupies all my life from, I don't know, from kindergarten or primary school to now. And I happen to have mixed race kids. So these issues of race, identity, mental health are quite important, especially nowadays when we have to deal with war and COVID and all those kind of things. But the issue of race is always there. You know, the issue of discrimination, racism, and so on. It's always there. So when you're a child living in Europe, Western Europe, essentially you deal with that. So Western Europe is known as, you know, the places of diversity, you know, country like France and UK and so on. And people wrongly believe that diversity helps for erasing racism. And they also believe that the lack of diversity contributes to racism, which is totally not true. It's not always the case. It's not because a country has a lot of people of different backgrounds that it's less racist. One of the cases, or two examples that I could say, it's France and England. These are the most diverse countries in Europe, yet they are, in my opinion, those who are designing racism around the world, including United States and so on, where the diversity is huge. So here we have three countries with the highest number or the highest number of diversity in terms of ethnicity as well. Then they are the ones producing, designing, legislating racist laws and policies. So how come such countries that have so many different people come to that point? They are the designers of this. And then you have the other countries that follow the trend, because the narrative has been created by those empires, and we follow the trend in Eastern Europe, in some countries of Eastern Europe, such as Denmark and so on and so on. So, and that's I think that the main thing to understand. We follow a narrative of racism and discrimination and exploitation has been constructed by empire. So if we look at Eastern Europe, then you have another story, you have another empire. And it's funny, interestingly enough, it is coming back. So how we got rid of those narratives that were constructed by empires? So it's a long work. It requires not only education, as people, I think, wrongly believe that it's with education that we can get rid of that, but it requires political will. It requires social justice. And that's the theme I mostly talk about these days, the theme of social justice, how we talk about social justice to our kids. Because social justice, it's also about small kids understand it with the concept of being fair and unfair. So we can engage with our kids how to be fair with people, how to be fair with people with disability, how to be fair with older people, the elderly, how to be fair with people who don't look like us or who think differently. So the concept of fairness here, it's fairness and unfair is very important to engage with the kids from early age until, 17, 18, and even more. Yeah. So yeah. So having experienced and what we see as unfair, this is justice and injustices in adults' words, yeah, in the adults' terminology. So what I'm seeing as unjust or injustices is what I translate by fair and unfair to my child. So every day I'm engaging with her, the one who's 7 years old, from all kind of perspectives. Crossing the street, how is that fair for an older woman or for a woman with a carriage or for a little child to have to run and cross the street? I mean, it lasts 5 seconds, the traffic lights, it lasts 5 seconds. And last time, just 2 days ago, my daughter was worried about that woman who has a stick to walk with, because it was already red and she was struggling to cross the street. So what place we give to the human in such a modern society? How fair is that to leave that woman, to let her run, and give more space to cars and to all kind of modernity? So she sees the word that way for now. Yeah, that's how I engage with her with the word. Other things could be the benches. If you see the benches in the street, now they are not benches, they are designed in such a way that homeless people cannot lay down. So they put kind of metals in between. Yeah. So that's to prevent homeless people to lay down on those benches. So I try to reflect with her on this, but also on terms of how to socialize with people, because it gives some limits to even feeling the other person touch, for example. So all of these little things are quite important for me, and I start with this. Yeah, and then naturally comes the concept of race. How she feels discriminated in places, in schools, and so on. Is it fair how she was discriminated? So this, by engaging with something that seemed quite neutral, such as those benches and traffic lights, then she starts to reflect on how this her life, her experience as mixed race child is actually treated, how she's treated as a mixed race child, whether in school, whether with friends, whether in public spaces, and so on and so on. And in the center of this, the child, how do we see the child in our spaces? What we call childism, it's the erasure, the invisibility of kids in modern society. And this happens a lot of time in public spaces. We don't see kids in public spaces. So I'm teaching her as well how to take ownership of the public spaces. Last time we were in a shopping mall. There was a beautiful piano. Nobody dared. Some adults dared doing that. So I just let them go, and I was sitting far away. And both of them, the 1.5 and the 7 years old, they were taking ownership of that piano. And the place itself, it's so nice, but it's not designed for kids. So how we design places for kids? There's no spaces for kids anymore. They don't even go to the street, let alone having spaces for them in shopping malls and et cetera, et cetera. So I teach her to have to take ownership, to take control of spaces as well, that it belongs to her as much as anybody else. But as parents who've been growing up in oppressive societies, such as Lithuania, the public spaces are scary. Scary for parents, but also scary, and then parents transmit that to their kids. They are scary places because they used to be militarized, and men were occupying those spaces. The same with parents who grew up in Africa and so on, or Black parents who grew up in Europe. If you look at the parents, how they deal with public spaces, then it is a bit funny to see them so worried about engaging with public spaces as parents, but also as adults, but also, as parents for their kids, but also as adults. So we need to take ownership of this as women, because women have been taken out of those spaces for a long time, but also as kids, So I'm trying to do that work with my child without, of course, I don't have these terms and so on, but I'm experiencing that with her, that she feels okay everywhere she goes. She feels that it's her place as a child, as a growing up a little girl, and hopefully as a woman. Yeah.
As a human being. So you said so many interesting things. So first of all, it's not enough to be exposed to diversity. That doesn't mean you would be less racist. And when you talked about France, UK, and so diversity doesn't mean that by default you're going to be less racist.
Right.
Then you talked also about this historical conditioning. So the history who was written by those in power, and those in power are mainly white. So that's also the way it shapes the history and how we see things, because through those narratives. And you also talked about this social justice and fairness. And I guess kids get it really well because they have this innate feeling of this is not fair. They kind of sense it, they feel it. And then talking about life with kids through, is this fair? Is this how you want to live? Is it fair that you don't have a place to run? Is this fair that you don't have a park next to your house because there are only streets and there is no place for you? And then is this fair that you cannot go on the street and you have to play inside because it's not safe or it's not for kids? Or even when we go as a family to spend time, in a cafe or restaurant or a mall, is it fair that it's only for adults? There is no place for kids and it have to be calm, and you mustn't touch that thing because it's not for touching. So I love it because then with kids you have, as you say, you don't use those complicated terms and you don't speak about race. You have that's a question I also want to ask. So you speak like freely with simple words with kids. Do you have to name, let's say, race, or do you also learn them like those words, like there are like white people and black people and brown people, or people of color? Do you name it? Do you use?
Yes, I don't use the word race yet with my 7 years old, but I name people of color. She's totally aware of that there are white people, black people. She's comfortable now to use those terms. It doesn't mean, and people wrongly think that because we talk about race, then we are racist. Then it creates more racism. It's not by being oblivious to it, by ignoring it, that it gets better. It's by talking about it. So there's no way that your mixed race child or your white child don't see the differences of skin, but also the differences of treatment. They see it. And it's the same with disability. We can say to kids, this disabled child is just like us. True, is like us, but you also need to recognize those differences that make us richer as well, and how kids will interact with kids with disability or autism or all kind of things. So kids need to be aware of that. We can find other terms to describe that without creating negative feelings around it. And then that's just as important as diversity. Yeah.
So it's wrong to have this attitude and to say, I don't see the color.
That's white people talk. That's what we say. That, you know, we always make fun of it. I don't see the color. Or I have another one. We are all human beings. All these kind of things. That's white people talk, and we make fun of it when I'm in my black circle. You know, this kind of nonsense, privileged position of white person. Yeah, I mean, black people can also say that, but we're gonna make fun of that, and he most likely he's gonna try to deny. I'm talking about that black person. He's gonna try to deny his experience or the experience of his community. So we have all these terms that we make. I mean, we can anticipate that kind of talk that people bring on to just silence what you have to say about your experience as people of color. Yeah.
And I think there's a very fragile line, because you don't say it necessarily because you want something mean. You just don't know how to say that you are open and tolerant. So you say, you know, I don't see the color, but then obviously you see the color because this is in front of your face. And then saying I don't see the color also means I don't acknowledge your identity in some way, because this is the part of who you are. I mean, I am white, so someone telling me I don't see your color, what does that mean? I have a color and I am from this, you know, white race, whatever that means. So you are black, someone is brown. So saying I don't see the color, it's also diminishing the identity of a person.
Yeah, not only the identity, but the experience that that person's going through from that identity. Yes. And that's what is so painful to hear when someone, I believe many people say it out of a goodwill, but they should also learn that no, this is not sensitive to say I don't see that.
This is about educating. I'm gonna get there very fast, but just another thing. I remember when BLM movement started, Black Lives Matter. I remember most people saying that
all lives matter. Yeah.
Yeah, that all lives matter. Like, this is, you know, not fair to say that only Black lives matter, but and then this is not about saying, you know, like, of course all lives matter, but then we are talking about those lives that didn't matter for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And we kind of used that, again, those in power and mainly white people.
Yeah.
So
people,
they couldn't even stand it for a very short time, you know, like even for a few months, it was already too much. And now all lives matter, only all Black lives matter.
Yeah. So that was also very, very sad to hear. When people say, oh, Black Lives Matter, it means Black Lives Matter too. You know, that's what it means, you know. It doesn't mean that we don't care about all the other lives, but I think they got it, but they just want to play with.
Yes. Yeah. So, first of all, before we go to what we can do, so how do I know if I am a racist? You know, like, we talk about the race, and then there are people who are, you know, open to all the races and other who we call anti-racist. So how do you know if I'm a racist? What do I have to look inside myself? How do you find the answer?
I'm going to say something that is that's going to be very radical for your audience. I believe white people are all racist. I do believe that. Just as much
conditioning.
Yeah, just as much as I believe all men are sexist. That's what I really believe. And now what we do from that, you know, I say all white people are racist because there have been conditions for that. They have been conditioned, they were conditioned for that for a long time. And this is a history starting from 14th century until now. Now we can say, oh, slavery ended in the 18th century, but what came after slavery? After slavery came colonization, which was as harsh and as cruel as slavery, probably. And then after colonization, what came after that? This is we have racist policies, racist laws, and so on and so on. So this continues to feed those in power, and it happened to be the people in the West. So we have been fed and to believe that we are better. And then I say we, because also Black people and people of color embrace that narrative against each other's community. It's not, it doesn't mean that we are, that we have the power to enforce racism as people of color, but we embrace some of the narratives, just like women embrace narratives of patriarchy. You know, it is exactly the same. So women can be very discriminative against each other because they have internalized that patriarchal system. The same as Black people can be very discriminative towards each other because we also have internalized that. One of the things of one of the elements of internalization in the Black community, it's skin bleaching. People, men or mostly white Black women, trying to make their skin lighter. That's one of the elements of internalized racism. So if Black people have internalized that aspect of racism, you can't imagine how it is in Black people, in white people's bodies. And you can say you were born after the 80s and so on, so you have nothing to do with that. But there is something called transgenerational trauma. Black people of color, and here particularly Black people, have this transgenerational trauma, yeah, for sure. But also white people, we don't look at white bodies enough, how they got affected by the narratives and by the cruelty of colonization and discriminative policies. We don't look at that enough. Not long ago, until the 60s, there were human zoos, for Black people in Europe, in Belgium, in France probably a bit in the 50s, and then in the 60s in Europe, in Belgium, for example. These were human zoos. It means parents were grandparents as well, grandparents and some of the parents, they were going to, on Sunday, on public spaces, throwing bananas and saying all kinds of terrible things and looking at Black women or Black people in general in a cage. So this doesn't disappear like that, yeah? And we also have the lynching of Black people in the United States. This was up until the 70s. They were exposed, they were hanged down, and people were going to see the show. So how can you stop this cruelty from transmitting from the 14th century until the 1980s until now? No, you cannot stop like that. And parents transmitted not in the cruel manner as they've seen, but with the narrative. What they say when they see Black people on TV, how they talk about people of color in general, how do they talk about Muslim people, how do they talk about indigenous people. Yeah. So all of this has been internalized by the white bodies, and it to some real extent, and it was also internalized by the white bodies in a bigger extent. In the white psyche. So we can't just get rid of that. And it's not just about education, it's about policies, it's about the politics, how it is perpetuated throughout the years. Yeah. So we need to look at this and take a stand against any discriminative policies. And when you have, as a parent, when you have such a will to do things better, involve your child in what seems as volunteering work, but volunteering work, you don't make it just as something human or for the humanity. Make it as something political. If you go and help homeless people, talk about the fairness thing. How come we still have people in the street? What does the people in power do to eradicate that? So we need to talk about this when we volunteer with our kids as well. We need to talk about the political aspect in child terms.
It's funny because I've discussed a little bit differently, but this issue with one of my friends, and I remember us talking about it, and she was all about, as you are saying, about this, political enforcement. And I still kept thinking and saying that, but in order for us to change that politically, we need to have people in power who had been differently educated. Because if I go with the same narrative to the, power, and then I'm gonna create the more of the same. So it has to go together, right? We have to educate ourselves. And then from that place, because I see things differently, take other decisions. Is that correct?
Say it again, the last part, the last bit.
So because I see things differently now, because I have been educating myself, then from that place, I can take other decisions than people before me were taking.
Right.
But have to go together, right?
Right. Yeah, of course. And we also need to be aware that it's not about one individual, one politician of a goodwill, but it's also about the system. Yeah, there's politics, there's corporates, all part of this narrative. There's media as well, and medias are fed by corporates. So this all part of the same thing. This is they buy the narrative. The corporates buy the narratives of the media and politicians as well. So it takes a lot. It takes more than one individual to change the policy. So that's why it was so laughable when people started to praise Obama for being the black president, the first black president. But in fact, in terms of crimes, he committed much more crimes than any other president. But they thought that he's going to change the narrative. And actually, the killing of black people during his period was even higher, we all remember, Black Lives Matter was born on his presidency. So he didn't change the narrative because it's about a system. It's about a system that people have to fight. And those who are able to do that are the people in the streets. No, they have to bring change to that. And people now are more and more aware of those wars led by empires. We see the case with Russia now, but I'm just sad that people don't see the case with other big organizations in the West, so that's also another topic. But yeah, it takes a lot of will. And I like what you said about the work that you do on yourself, because it's about deconstructing yourself from what you have internalized. I do the same work regarding patriarchy, regarding sexist comments. I do my job, I do my homework, and I'm not there yet, but I'm struggling to get it right. And I'm expecting anyone to do the same work, anyone who has the tools to do that, to do the same work.
I am a mom. I have 2 kids, and I very recently, like just a couple of years ago, I made this connection with how we speak to each other within the family. It amplifies when we go outside and we see people who are different. Because if within the family, every difference from who I am and who I'm representing will be judged, blamed, it's going to be a power struggle, like who's right, who's wrong, meaning there's only place for one position, like one opinion, one way of being, one color, whatever. Meaning they are going to learn this message that if we are diverse, if we are different, this is something wrong with it, because there is only one way of living. So more I can tolerate and accept and be open to diversity within my family, like starting with, opinions diversity, temperament diversity, like living, I can, maybe I eat meat and my children want to just eat vegetables. Usually it's the other way around, but let's say it's that way. And I show that all of it can be contained in our house, because not because you are different means something wrong with you. When they go outside the house and they see other differences, like, I don't know, people who are, I don't know, living on the street, or people who have of different colors, we might be able to, I hope, be more open. But because that has a place within our family, meaning all those people also, I'm not more, I'm not less. I mean, we are all the same, just different. And then be curious about that other person, like say hello to a cleaning lady, in my school, because she's just as human as I am. That doesn't mean what job she's doing there. Just, what, notice all those other different people from where we live, how we live, and treat them equally, because we are all equal. And then notice also their way of living, not do what we told, like, I don't see your color, I don't see where you come from. I see that, but that isn't a challenge for me to connect with you as a human being. Every human being can learn from you.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. I don't know what else to add. Totally agree. I mean, the thing of diversity, where I am, I mean, my family, it's all about that. I happen to be Black and Muslim, and there's a lot of diversity in our house. And my wife is ethnically Russian and Lithuanian, and there are also so many languages in our home. So I think we did it quite well, and it's about respect. It's about letting the person be and express his ideas and opinions. Sometimes it's not easy, especially when we talked about political opinion and so on. It's also diverse nowadays, even in my home. And there's also the fact of accepting what my wife is doing well and what we're doing well. For example, I don't drink alcohol. I've never seen alcohol in my home, because she has that respect, that understanding. My wife eats pork, but never seen pork at home. So she has it when she's with visiting families and friends. So it doesn't bother anybody. And I do the same. I celebrate Christmas with her, although I'm not from that tradition. But we do celebrate Christmas at home with everything that Christian people do, except for the praying for me. So yeah, it's about accepting, not just tolerating. It's about accepting and respecting who we are as human beings, but also as community. That's something that is so neglected, the power of community in people's lives. And now I see that people try to rebuild that, but it's gonna take time. But yeah, so my kids are growing up in that kind of environment, and it seems to work for now. And yeah, so most importantly, I would say the same. It's about respect and acceptance.
Because in my son's class, we had in September, I guess, there is a girl who came from, so she's from a mixed family. She's half, so third Lithuanian, third Norwegian, third from Ghana, I guess. So she has very different background, yeah. And so this is, I guess she was the first child of color in the school. And I remember before welcoming her, like, everyone was a little bit unsure what to say and how to do that, like, because now we are more or less conscious about that, and we want to do well, want to do our homework and do well. But there is also this like fear, like, what if I say it wrong? Do I have to say it? What do I have to emphasize? Should I, like, it's this, like, we are unsure how to say and what to say, and or she just walks into the classroom and we don't say anything. So what are your thoughts about it? Like, let's say, how do we welcome this, everyone will see that she's a person of color. So do we acknowledge it? Do we give it a voice? Do we say it, or do we let just children be together and just make their own welcome?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways, and teachers' work and the values of the school has a lot to do with it. In the case of teachers, it depends. They have to choose carefully in terms of academic, the content. It doesn't mean that because there's a black girl or a brown girl that we have to adapt all the content. But with a little adaptation of the content, then you make everyone else brighter, actually. And that's what people don't get. It's not about the child that we are only working for, but it's also about all the other kids. How do you want them to grow up? For example, instead of reading all the time the history, or let's say of Cinderella, for example, where you have black, white cast and white characters and so on, then choose another book from time to time where you have diversity. And then you engage with, and the diversity would be brown, black, white, Asians, and so on. And then you engage with the kids that way. Look how he looks like. He looks beautiful. He has, what kind of hair he has. And he has a different shape of eyes or lips and so on and so on. And usually the story is well created, and teachers can engage with that content, with that story, with the kids, and then start a discussion with differences and acceptances. We're all different, and so on and so on. But teachers and parents don't appreciate that that gift that is in the class, whether he's a child with disability, with other syndromes, or with color. They don't appreciate that gift. Yeah, that it's also a gift for their kids. So changing sometimes the content or celebrating diversity in terms of, let's say, Black History Month, let's say. It can be just one day or half a day. Or if you have a Muslim child, let's celebrate the celebration of fasting that day. Yeah. So teachers have to do their work in looking at the culture of the child, or if it's not the culture, what is important for that child to celebrate. Yeah. So they need to look at it and make that person or that little child very visible and appreciated. So when they do that, they also work for the other kids, because it's also about raising and educating open-minded kids and parents as well. So the content is very, very, very important. And then when they have morning circles, take different themes to talk about. Something that is happening, something about it can be something about diversity, something about events that are happening. All of this can be celebrated in non-formal way. It doesn't have to be through the book, but also through the different cultures that we have in the class. And when I'm talking about culture, it's not about only ethnic culture or Black culture or Muslim culture and so on and so on. It's about what the kids is valuing as a person. Maybe they do something special at home. So it's a culture of acceptance and respect in a lot of forms. Yeah.
So it's again what we talked a little bit earlier. It's like saying, I see you, fully.
Yeah.
So I see that you are different and I'm curious. So tell me about, what we are coming from, what are your traditions? Can we celebrate that in a classroom? So how do you celebrate it?
Right.
Just integrating person means first I'm going towards the person and showing that I'm curious, I want to know. Because I feel that, as you said, I'm gonna be richer afterwards.
Yeah.
It's a both-way street. It's not just, come and we're gonna show you how we live here.
Yeah.
But it's also
exactly.
how you live, where you come from.
And again, this is valuable for everybody. And then we need to find there's a thin line between using that or using that for everybody's education, and using a person or that child as a props for educating yourself, because this happens a lot in many organizations. They take immigrants, refugees. Oh, let's go. We're going to educate Lithuanian kids, Lithuanian people, how we are, how you are. And then it feeds our ego and it feeds our education. And then they use them as props a lot of times. So that's why now I refuse all these kind of things to go and show myself because I'm Black or because I'm from different culture, just to educate people. It
depends on your intention. If you just want to gather some quotas or, to be well seen because...
exactly. In the case of the Black child, for example, the hair is something that very, very, very interesting for the other kids. So children can start, teachers can start with this, why she has a different hair. Something very simple, without putting the spotlight on her, but why we have different hair, for example, and how do we care about hair? It can be something very neutral that way, without putting the spotlight on the child. He shouldn't feel special in that way. It shouldn't feel that he's that thing that people are interested in, but good enough to feel good about himself or herself.
I love when you said that it's a fine line to find, because the kid shouldn't feel special, like everyone looks at me because I know that I'm different. Right. But then she should feel celebrated and accepted for who she is as every other child in class. Like every one of them has something unique to him. And we celebrate that. Just as a whole human being, not just, your color or your, just the whole human being. And just like your color, it's one aspect of it, your hair, your personality, the way you move, what you see, what you like. It's not easy to do that, because we tend to see what's visible and then go from there. And talk about like really being curious about who I'm dealing with, who is that person. I want to learn from you, and if you're open, you're gonna learn from me. It's a human exchange.
Right. And
children start teasing that person because of that, because they used to play with only, I don't know, white dolls and white Lego, and then suddenly there's just this different person.
Right.
Teasing her, and so how do you go from there?
And it's for me, it's beyond the black and white thing narrative. It's about all the kids that are perceived as so different from the other child. We can take children with disability, children with autism, children who present some kind of challenges to the normalcy of the educational system. So how do we accept children with disabilities in the class, for example, or in a school? Are the schools equipped for that? And why they are not equipped for that? How do we support the education of children with autism? What does the government do in your country to support this, or what does your educational institution do to support this? So all of this for me is connected. There's no difference in terms of historical narrative, but also in terms of contemporary narrative, how we accept that. You know, people with disabilities have been as much discriminated, to some extent as much discriminated as people of color. And women were also in that situation. The way we describe Black people, people of color, essentially Black people in the hierarchy of race, it is the same narrative as the way we've been describing women until the 50s and 60s and until now. The way we describe them is like, these are people without the power to govern, because they are too emotional. They are ruled with emotions, so they can't have that capacity to rule a country or to administrate themselves. That's how we talked about Black people in the hierarchy of race, and of course, much more, savages and so on. And for women, it's the same. They are too emotional, they can't vote. And that was the narrative until probably the 60s or the end of 45, 50. So there's a similarity between racism, race, women, and also disability. There are many people, they were also sent, people with disabilities sent to the camps in the 40s because they were seen as not fitting to the society. They were not able to produce. Yeah, they were not able to benefit the society. So they were a kind of anomaly to the white society. So these narratives of disability, it's not only about the physicality, the body, but it's also about the race and the gender. So all of this is connected. So when I'm talking about race, because it's that what we're talking about, I have in mind what is how women are treated, were treated, and are still are in our societies, how people with disabilities, but also how homeless people are treated. And we see it now, we see the narrative, we see how they are made invisible. So all of this fits, and a proper institution has to take this into consideration. An institution that doesn't provide a good education, or at least a support for kids with autism and disability, they also won't be able to provide proper education or proper support for kids of another ethnic backgrounds, because they are seen as invisible. They are seen as not fitting to what we try to do nowadays for education. They can't provide a system of thought. They cannot think. They cannot do mathematics and all these kind of things. That's how they are seen, but it's not the reality. Yeah.
Thank you, Kamal. I have one more question for you. You're a dad, right? So I asked that to all my speakers. What's the biggest struggle for you as a dad in your life? Not in
too much love. Too much love. Too much love. I can't handle it. And I mean it. That's totally that. Too much love. It's just extraordinary. I can't handle it. I'm totally, especially when my child is sick, I'm totally devastated. But my wife is much stronger than I am in that case. But yeah, that's the biggest struggle, actually. And yeah, I can't handle it. It's just like too overwhelming. It's a bit scary. And another thing is just the safety as a growing up girl. Yeah, so that's a bit scary. So I'm trying to teach her from male perspective how to handle situations, how to not let herself be treated differently by boys, because it started already. So all of this are, for me, it's a real struggle. Yeah, too much love, and the patriarchy and sexist system in which we live in.
I love the first one. Too much love. This is the first time I hear it said that way. And it's so touching. I mean, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Where can people find you? Can we follow you online on some Facebook, Instagram account? Maybe you talk more about what we just talked about.
Yes, I'm rubbish at this. I certainly need your professionalism on this. I've been trying to, I'm busy with so many things. So, but now I've decided this year to get it started. All of these talks, all of these talks about parenting, about race, about social justice and education, then I'm going to compile them in one thing, a Facebook page, and I'll start giving talks probably from next month, and I will let you know if ever you want to promote that. And also
in the notes, and I'm gonna put that in the notes under the video as soon as we have it, so everyone can see. And then...
that would be great. Also, I'm gonna create a salon, this kind of intellectual salons from the 18th century, that started to come back again. So where I'm gonna invite people like you to come and give a talk on specific things like parenting and social justice, etc.
Super nice. Yeah. Okay. So thank you. And send me the link when you have a link to all of your wisdom page. I'm gonna share it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renata. Always nice to talk to you.
Bye.
See you soon, probably. Bye.